Hello ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher. We're doing some Destruction Warlock today. Do you like big pretty numbers? Well, this spec delivers in spades. Oh yes it does. Oh, just thought 140k you in the face, son, without any debuffs or buffs or whatever. That's just how I roll, son. Yeah, this is an absolutely fun spec. It is unfortunately slightly worse off than the other two specs just now, but that's okay. That's not a problem because it's still incredibly fun to play, and fun is what we're always after. Let's look at the Destruction Warlock. Let's go into it. We are getting Immolate. Yes, the classic Destruction spec. Of course, it's always picking up the Immolate. Our lovely dot, our burning fire dots. Wonderful. Conflag. Target enemy instantly explodes, dealing 40,000 fire damage and reducing their movement speed. It generates burning embers. We're going to get to that shortly. Incinerate, our classic filler spell. Our wonderful flames flying across there. Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt is the interesting one. It's our big nuke. Okay, it guarantees crit. In fact, this one's damage is increased by critical strike chance. So it always crits, guaranteed. 100% of the time it's going to crit. You can increase its damage via critical strike rating on your gear. And also chaotic energy. You drain energy directly from the twisting nether. Your mana regenerates 625% faster. And your spell haste is also increased by your mana regeneration. Which means we do not have life tap. No, we do not. We do not have life tap. And then we have the crux of this one, the Burning Embers. Burning Embers are generated primarily by casting Incinerate and are consumed by Chaos Bolt to deal damage or by Ember Tap to heal you. Okay, so let's get down to the bare bones. We are generally working on a method of generating as many Burning Embers as possible to nuke them with Chaos Bolts. That's right, it's a nice little synergy. We have ways of generating Burning Embers and a way of dumping Burning Embers, okay? So we have spells like Immolate, Conflag, and Incinerate, which all generate Burning Embers. If those spells crit, they generate twice as much. Generally, they're going to generate 1/10 of a Burning Ember each time, but if they crit, you will get twice as much. You'll get 2/10 of a Burning Ember, up to a maximum of 4 as I have there, but that is via something else. Let's talk about the talents you're probably going to pick up. Now, there's some various choices here. I do not recommend Harvest Life anymore. Our AoE from straight up DPS is actually better. I recommend either Soul Leech or Dark Regeneration. Dark Regeneration is going to absorb big hits and give you a straight up heal. Soul Leech, a nice gradual heal that always comes. It comes from Incinerate, Fell Flame, and Chaos Bolt. Heals you and your pet for 10% of that damage dealt. And as you've seen, we hit very, very hard as a Destruction Warlock. We hit extremely hard, especially with those Chaos Bolts, which is always nice. The next one is some sort of CC or Mortal Coil. Mortal Coil is generally the one you want to roll with because it's an on-demand heal. It's very, very nice. You can fire it off if you need that emergency heal. You're going to get a lovely 61k heal there. Nothing that's going to save your life, okay? You're about to die. You fire off that Mortal Coil. You're going to get a lovely little heal out of it. Another defensive cooldown. Again, I've said this in the other guides. Warlocks are just massively robust, okay? Killing a Warlock is not an easy task. They have plenty of ways of getting themselves out of shit. Yes, they do. Dark Bargain prevents all damage for 8 seconds, but it will give you a dot when it expires, which will deal 50% of the damage you absorbed, but it does prevent all damage. Very handy in raids. Sacrificial Pact, giving yourself a wonderful shield. And Soul Link, of course. Active all damage and healing to you and your demon is shared. Very nice. Be aware though, if you don't have a demon, that could be a little bit of a fucking fuck up. Not cool. Burning Rush, Unbound Will. If you're raiding, Bloodfears tend to not be chosen whatsoever. Unbound Will tends to be the choice for most people if you have some really, really nasty magic debuffs on you or things that slow you down very nastily. Be aware it does take 20% of your maximum health though. Be aware when you're firing that bad boy off that you don't do something stupid. Burning Rush, again, deals 4% of your maximum health every second, but it gives you a 50% movement speed, and you have to deactivate it, okay? A nice little zip, move the fuck around, get out of there quickly, reposition yourself for some mad deeps super quickly. A really nice little spell, like it, okay? I tend to like Burning Rush over either of these unless it requires Unbound Will. In terms of your DPS, straight up single target DPS, sacrificing your pet is going to be the way to go, okay? It's going to give you the most damage you can get. When you sacrifice it, Your damage dealt by Conflag, Shadowburn, and Fell Flame is increased by 25%. Spells modified by Fire and Brimstone are unaffected. Chaos Bolt deals 25% additional damage over 3 seconds and restores 2% of your maximum health every 5 seconds. Very nice ability, okay? Grimoire of Sacrifice allows you to not only not bother with your pets, worry about micromanaging them or anything like that. It's just straight up increased DPS, and it's really the best one right now, okay, for those big bad bosses. I've said in the other guides, your level 90 talents are pretty garbage. Nothing mega going on here. Do aware that if you can get some nice reflected damage in the fight and you're a little bit clever about using it, Archimonde's Vengeance will be a DPS increase, there's no doubt about that. It causes an enemy to suffer 25% of all damage you take for 8 seconds. You can pull off some nice reflected damage, it can happen. And passively, while you're not using it, enemies who attack you suffer 5% of all the damage they deal to you as well. So very handy depending on the fight. The other one is Kill Jaden's Cunning. Allows you to cast and channel while moving, okay? So again, a movement-heavy fight, Kill Jaden's Cunning is going to be the most beneficial. If you use it passively, it still allows you to cast and channel while moving, but reduces your movement speed by 15%, stacking up to twice, okay? So be aware that it will slow you down if you're not actually activating Kill Jaden's Cunning. Choose it as and when you need it. Manoros Fury increases the area of AoE spells by 500%. Not that useful, especially for 5-mans and some of the early raiding. Some bosses will get the benefit of that, but to be honest, if you're raiding, you're generally not going to be destruction, and it's very situational that Manoros Fury is going to come in handy anyway. So be aware you're going to be choosing either Archimonde's Vengeance, can you reflect some good damage? Are you moving all the time? Kill Jaden's Cunning. Let's look at our glyphs. Glyph of Burning Embers, really recommend this to set up really nice nukes. It gives you an extra Burning Ember. There are going to be moments we'll talk about in the rotation section of this video where you can quite literally set up some massive nukes and also be otherwise occupied rather than burning embers as much as possible. We like to control them. Controlled burst will always give you more DPS. Gift of Conflag is neither here nor there. You can take it if you wish. It's not amazing. It's just to do the slow. Glyph of Dark Soul is recommended unless you have some specific moment when you need to burn the shit out of something, okay? Glyph of Dark Soul is a DPS increase unless you have something that needs to die at a specific point in a fight. While off cooldown, your Dark Soul ability passively grants you 10% of the effect of the active effect, but reduces the power of Dark Soul by 10%. Our Dark Soul, as destruction, is instability. Increases our critical strike chance by 27%, okay? For 20 seconds. The passive of this is increase our crit chance by 3%. As we gain so many more Burning Embers, if we crit, it's a very nice passive buff to have. It really, really is. It's a very nice buff. However, it does affect your Chaos Bolts, obviously, which is based on your critical strike chance. So, if you do need to nuke something very, very hard at a specific time, having the full power of Dark Soul instability will be worthwhile. That 30% extra crit, 3% extra damage on those hard-hitting Chaos Bolts is always worthwhile. Alright, guys? So take that into mind while you're doing your glyphs. Gearing is still up for debate with destruction a little bit. What we can agree on for definite is that hit chance is a must, okay? A missed Chaos Bolt, which hits for incredible amounts in raids, especially when you start getting some gear, is a lot of lost DPS. You don't want that. You don't want to miss the chance to generate Burning Embers. You certainly don't want to miss your Chaos Bolts while dumping them. So get your hit cap. You want that immediately. Your next priority is going to be either crit or mastery, okay? There's arguments either way which one is better. At the moment, mastery is slightly edging out. You'll see I have slightly more mastery. But crit is also awesome. Crit is also awesome. So you're going to be working backwards and forwards between them. What we can agree on is that haste is just generally garbage, okay? Haste is pretty garbage for a number of reasons. I'll go into the rotation section. Your gemming will follow alongside that. Just prioritize that you need the Burning Primal Diamond. 3% increased crit effect on these big, hard-hitting spells. You're going to be critting a lot. So you want that gem in there, okay? You need it. It's a priority. It's a must. Make sure you have it. But generally, focus a bit more on mastery, get your crit up, make sure you're just reforging out any haste you possibly have. Get rid of your haste. Haste is generally based on giving you extra dot ticks. Immolate is not a great source of damage. It is a DPS increase, but it's pretty minor when you compare it to everything else, such as 45k Conflax. Okay? Very, very simple. We're going to go into rotation now. I need to talk about a couple of spells with you here, so I'm going to bring up the spell book. There are a couple of spells that you need to be aware of. First and foremost, it is, when I find it, Fire and Brimstone. As Affliction, you have a spell called Soulburn, which modifies your next spells. Fire and Brimstone is essentially the same thing, with a bit more of a macho name to match the Destruction spec. It costs you 1 Burning Ember, similar to a Soul Shard, for the Destruction spec, and it modifies various spells. Your next Immolate, Incinerate, and Conflag or Curse will hit all targets within 15 yards of the target and deal 50% of their normal damage. So it's an AoE modifier. That's essentially what it is. It's an AoE modifier, okay? So, just give you an example. I have 1 Burning Ember right here. If I fire up my Fire and Brimstone, you can see I get a buff there. It consumes the Burning Ember, and then I throw an Immolate. You see, Immolates everything, okay? Very nice for the AoE. Very, very nice. So, you need to be aware of Fire and Brimstone, okay? It's very, very, very important. Moving on, Havoc causes the next Chaos Ball or 3 other single target spells cast by the Warlock to also strike this target. If you have more than 1 target alive, you need Havoc up. You need to be using it on cooldown because Havoc is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So if I just quickly gather myself a Burning Ember, as I have done there, and I stick Havoc on this target, watch what happens when I Chaos Bolt it. You'll see I'll actually launch 2 ultimately sexy Chaos Bolts and do massive amounts of damage. Massive amounts of damage. So Havoc, it needs to be on cooldown when you're using it. Shadow Burn is another spell that comes into Destruction. It also costs a Burning Ember. It's an instant cast execute ability. So when we get into our 20% phase, you want to stop using Chaos Bolt and start using Shadow Burn, okay? It really, really hurts. It only activates below 20%. What I will say is do not try and macro these together. I know some people have been trying desperately to work on a macro which will either cast Shadow Burn or Chaos Bolt. It'll cast Shadow Burn if it's available. Simply put, it doesn't really work unless you get really tricky. Don't try and do that. Have a separate binding for it. You don't have a great steal of spells anyway as a Destruction Warlock. Make sure though below 20% you have something tracking there. The last thing I want to talk about is Backdraft, okay? Backdraft is going to be very important to your single target DPS. Backdraft is caused when you conflag something. When you cast Conflagrate, the cast time and mana cost of your next 3 Incinerates or 1 Chaos Ball is reduced by 30%. Chaos Ball takes 3 seconds to cast. It feels like an eternity. It absolutely feels like an eternity. So your temptation, your gut feeling, is to cast this with Backdraft up. That is actually a DPS loss. Now, Chaos Bolt needs 3 charges of Backdraft in order to be used, okay? Chaos Bolt needs 3 charges. So you can see there, 3 Incinerates or 1 Chaos Bolt. So if I emulate this and conflag it, as you can see, I've got a little tell me when thing here, which tells me I have 3 stacks of Backdraft. I do not want to cast Chaos Bolt under those circumstances. There, simply put. Now, if I try to cast Chaos Bolt, it will not consume any of my Backdraft charges. Notice, though, that your conflag has 2 charges, okay? It'll store 2, so you can actually go up to 6 charges of Backdraft. Do not, under any circumstances, cast Chaos Bolt until you are back down to 2. Now you cast Chaos Bolt, okay? Now you cast Chaos Bolt, and you're not going to waste any of those. So I've got a Chaos Bolt now. I'll fire it off, and you'll notice this Chaos Bolt is unaffected and did not use any of my Backdraft charges. Very, very important, guys, that you get a hold of that. So let's talk about a single target rotation. You also want Curse of Elements up if it's not already present. Increase magic damage taken by 5%. Very important. You're going to keep up Immolate. You're going to cast Conflag on cooldown. And your only goal, okay, simplify what you're doing, is to generate as many Burning Embers as quickly as possible. And then to drop them. As a simple single target DPS rotation, simply keep Conflag on cooldown. Keep Immolate ticking. And generate as many Burning Embers as possible. When you are below 3 stacks of Backdraft, feel free to then fire off your Chaos Bolt and keep your DPS going. But ultimately, track that conflag. You need to get as many conflags out as possible. This is the main crux of it. Not even the Chaos Bolts. The Chaos Bolts, you've got 4 to play with and a lot of spells in between. Conflag is so important because of this Backdraft buff. The more Backdrafts you have throughout a fight, the more Incinerates you will cast, therefore the more Burning Embers and the more Chaos Bolts you can cast. Your DPS is reliant on getting as much Backdrafted Incinerates off as possible, which means the main priority is Conflag. The main priority. You have some leeway with Chaos Bolt. It takes a while to generate these Embers, so don't panic about keeping this on cooldown. Now, Having said all that, because conflag does go up to 2 charges, you can be a little bit flexible with how quickly you use it. As it can generate 2 charges, you have some leeway before you're not actually generating a conflag charge. It needs to get to 2 before it gets there. But be aware, you want to keep this on cooldown and try and keep conflag on cooldown. It'll make your rotation much, much easier, okay? And when you get into these periods where conflag's on cooldown, you're not backdrafted, feel free to fire off those Chaos Bolts, use those up, and then get back to your conflag in the late rotation. Very easy. You have no curses, nothing like that, no corruptions to manage as a Destruction Warlock. Your single target rotation is exceptionally easy. Exceptionally easy. AoE is where it starts to become a little bit tricky, okay? AoE becomes a little bit tricky. There are a few ways of doing AoE, thanks to our Fire and Brimstone talent, okay? This modifies lots and lots of spells. You want to be keeping Immolate up on as many targets as possible. You can do that with your Burning Embers and Fire and Brimstoning Immolate onto lots of targets at once. That's fine, but be aware they will burn for half the damage they normally would. So about 4 mobs, it's actually worth. Get your Rain of Fire on. Now, Rain of Fire does not need to be channeled, okay? You can see my Rain of Fire is ticking away. Get your Immolates going. Now, you'll see you'll start generating a lot of Burning Embers very quickly. I recommend some way of tracking Rain of Fire to make sure it's ticking. While this is ticking away, you can see I'm generating a ton of Burning Embers. What do we do with them? You have a number of choices that you can do with these, okay? One is to do a nice Fire and Brimstone conflag on everything. And you can see that will hit pretty hard. The other one is to Fire and Brimstone the Incinerate. You actually want to be doing combinations of all these. You can see that Fire and Brimstone Incinerate is actually doing a ton of damage. And it's hitting every single target. Now, the good thing about this is when you're conflagging, you're actually backdrafting, which means you can easily fire off a ton of Incinerate. So you need to be almost mixing in your single target rotation with all these abilities, while maintaining a wonderful Rain of Fire uptime. Keep your Rain of Fire up as much as possible. When you start getting lots and lots and lots of mobs, you're going to start generating a lot of Burning Embers as well. So in that point, you're definitely going to be using Fire and Brimstone Incinerates, Fire and Brimstone conflags, keep your Rain of Fire down, Fire of Brimstone Incinerates, and just keep it up. Keep it up. Look at how many embers I'm generating just through this. Really easy. Track that. Track your Rain of Fire. Make sure you're doing a lot of Rain of Fire. Immolate's wearing off. Get another bit of Rain of Fire and Brimstone Immolate down, and keep all this damage going. Keep it going. You will generate so many Burning Embers, and you'll start doing massive amounts of AoE damage. That is how you AoE. It's going to take some practice, guys. It's going to take some practice. I'm not going to lie to you. It takes a little bit of practice to manage it all. There's a lot going on. You've got Rain of Fire. You've got Immolate tracking across many targets. All this kind of stuff. Very, very easy to cock this up. So do your best and see how you get on. All right, boys. Going to jump into 5-man now and try to show you all this stuff. So join me. Let's go.